Oh my God, we are live for a special edition of Constellation Research TV. Woohoo! And we're going to introduce our guests in reverse order of whatever order I have, since I have no idea what the reverse order is. Starting with John Furrier. Where are you coming in from? What are we talking about? And who
I'm
do you
in
represent?
Palo Alto, California, co-founder, co-CEO of SiliconANGLE and theCUBE, and 14th year of that business, digital media, digital TV, event coverage, research, you name it, we got it. AI, we got the shipping AI as well.
Wait, aren't you supposed to say the cube? Like I don't recognize it when it's not said correctly.
The cube.
Yep. All right. Crystal, where are you coming in from?
Hi, so today I'm in Boston, stepped away from a big event at the convention center.
The event, we love
Okay.
it. Please say hi.
All right, I'm at IDC Directions, but I wanted to make sure I carved out some time for my friends at Constellation. For those that don't know me, I'm normally in the Bay Area, so with ARInsights for 12 years, working with the best community on the planet, analysts and analyst relations. Yeah,
She's one of the OGs, and more importantly, yeah, we love IDC. We love Crawford, and yeah, please tell me to say hi. So
absolutely, you got it.
Ludo, we're cutting into your dinner. What's going on? Where are we?
Yeah, that's a scene for French people, right? I'm calling in from London, and it's 8 o'clock. It's wine o'clock, and we're really pleased to be there with old friends, new friends. Really chuffed. I think it's a super important conversation.
Yeah. Very cool. Hey, we love having you here, so thank you. Larry, where's home? Where are we talking? Where are we coming in from?
I'm outside Philadelphia, and I'm editor-in-chief of Constellation Insights, recovering journalist, and kind of seen some of the topics that we're writing about today before, or that we're talking about today.
Yeah. And the lovely Liz Miller. Where are you coming in from?
From Los Angeles, California, in the lovely area of Woodland Hills. So what's up, everyone? I used to be up in the Bay Area, but then I decided you can't take an LA girl out of LA for too long. She starts to itch. Like, I got to get home. So down in Los Angeles, of course, with Constellation, I cover the wild and woolly world of customer experience. So I'm glad to be here today because gosh knows a lot of these metrics and a lot of these measures that we're talking about, I'm sorry to say, marketers invented them out of the sky a couple of years ago. So sorry about that, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that a little. And we have a special guest, Molly Lauck, who we recorded with, and she'll share some of her insights as well along the way. So why are we here? Well, let's start with this. Ethical marketing, navigating the dark arts and temptations of paid marketing and bot-driven metrics in the age of AI. It's only going to get worse, right? And here's the challenge, right? We're in a very trusted environment. Analysts, media, influencers in the space, trust is the ultimate currency. Buyers of tech really hope that their vendors are operating with the highest ethics. On the other hand, tech vendors are competing for time and attention, and they're hoping to use influencers and media and analysts, as a trusted source, a trusted objective source. But the challenge is we've got a fine line between what marketing strategy firms sometimes pose as industry analysts, or sometimes are using paid media and bot metrics to juice up views and prove their performance marketing chops. Well, that's going to be a challenge. But what happens when your marketing dollars are wasted into empty eyeballs and fake users with no budget? And that's why we're here today. We're going to talk a little bit more about where we are. But let's start with Act 1. How do we get here, and why is it so bad? Ludovic, you can kick off.
Well, the normal interface of analysts tends to be analyst relations, and that's a discipline that's starting many moons ago at IBM, and analyst relations have been formed to answer basically ratings from analysts. So we're here because analysts talk about analyst firms, and we're here to provide facts. Fast forward 20, 25 years, 30 years, and analyst relations still have a unique problem in proving the value of analysts and therefore of analyst relations. So at the IIAR, we came up with what's called the AR compass to try segment the analyst output into 4 dimensions, which is strategy, the insights that analysts provide to vendors, very difficult to quantify, but when you get it, you get it, because that's an insurance policy that prevents you from making huge mistakes, acquiring the wrong company, hiring the wrong person. The second one, it's SO, so opinion, is analyst driving opinion. in published research, but also in the press, in media, in social media nowadays, in events and other things. And that's what we're here to talk about. A lot of people see that, they see the emerged part of the iceberg. And the problem is they measure what they can measure instead of measuring what they should measure. And I have a saying from a South American author, which I always forget the name of. It says, when the sage points at the moon, the idiot looks at the finger. And that's a really, really important one. Marketing people tend to measure what is easy to measure rather than what they should measure. I'll get a lot of flack from marketing folks here. Probably Liz will tell me marketing people are not that bad. But I'm really passionate about that.
Yeah.
The third dimension is the impact on sales. So we know that analysts drive recommendations, directly speak to customers, buyers, and have an impact throughout the whole sales process. It's not a funnel. It's no longer a funnel. It's a big mess of spaghetti. But analysts uniquely are trusted, and we'll come back to that word later, right? I guess, right? You put it right.
Yeah.
Analysts are the only ones trusted and influential throughout that whole mess of spaghetti, which is called the sales process or the buying process.
Yeah.
And finally, marketing. This is where people get it wrong as well. They think they should start with marketing and buying things from analysts before understanding what analysts actually are saying and how they are driving conversations. And that's another word I want to place in there, sit in there. So trust is a big, big word. Conversation is a huge word for the rest of this panel. So how did we get that? Back to your question, focusing on the wrong outcome, focusing on published research, the dot in the not so magic quadrant, and sales influence or what people think it is.
And real quick, Ludovic, what type of pressure are analyst relations professionals facing? And then we'll go to Crystal to talk about what you're hearing from your clients.
It's huge. So analyst relations is marketing seen as a cost, not seen as a value very often. So proving the value of insight, proving how you impact sales, proving how you deliver leads, and that's wrong. Proving how analysts themselves add value to an organization whilst consuming a huge amount of bandwidth. When you do a major evaluation, that can suck hundreds of man hours. So analysts consume a lot of time to provide information, analyst relations consume a lot of time to provide information back to analysts, suck budget, and what is in return. So that's the pressure.
God, you make us look like horrible people. Thank you, Ludo. Crystal, what are you hearing from your clients?
No.
You know, we oftentimes say that the revenue correlation, right, is the hardest thing to measure. And I think because of that desire to say, how are we impacting the business? How are we impacting the marketplace, right? That leads teams to think about the analyst landscape in a couple of different ways, right? You talk about analysts that have broad reach, and this is like sort of the eyeballs, you know, how many views, that type of thing, how many people can help us share our message. And then you talk about analysts with depth, right, in terms of the market and the strategic aspect of it, right? So we hear a lot of that. And then to complicate everything, I'm hearing a lot of, how is the tech buyer changing, right? May that be because of digital media, may that be generational, right? How do we educate our stakeholders, our buyers in the marketplace of, you know, the importance of the data, of the research, of the evaluation, if we have this much of their time and attention? So, you know, I think that is what has probably really blown up this very topic, right? Because people are trying to engage with audiences to get that hook in, right? So that it can then turn into this broader conversation of driving value, or, you know, the earn versus learn conversation, driving value to the buyers or learning from the analysts, right? And so I think it gets really complicated there.
Yeah, Crystal, there's another dimension too. I mean, and John will touch upon this too as well, but we literally have no B2B media left. right? And in many cases, the analysts are playing the role where B2B media was before, and the consumption has gone from written to video, as you were saying here. I'm going to turn to Liz really quickly, because the CMO side, right, of what's happening is really a shift in what B2B marketers are expected to deliver on, and the metrics. You were, in charge of the CMO council as CMO, the CMO council. I mean, that's crazy, right? I mean,
Herding
you were
cats.
seeing that.
Herding cats for a living.
So tell us more.
Well, I mean, I think as a marketer and for a large part of my career as a B2B marketer, I think the big shift that I noticed in that role and what I was expected to not only deliver, but what I was even buying at that time was really more about what could I do to drive incremental growth that was durable over time. And I think that becomes the big difference, is the durability over time, right? In a B2C posture, most marketers kind of learn to do, how do I do a quick bite? How do I get something really big? How do I show a big number? And so I think that muscle memory of, I can get an influencer that can get 1 million eyeballs on something, like that became the muscle memory that we learned in a B2C motion. And gosh knows, I had that, and I was with a skincare organization, and I would get called every single time of like, yes, it's great that you changed people's ideas about skincare and skin cancer, but I want to know how many people saw me, if it was our CEO, talk about skin. Like she wanted the numbers of how many eyeballs. So it was always that eyeball conversation. But when I would have to toggle into B2B mode, and then when I became that kind of B2B content marketer, it wasn't ever about how big, how broad, how expansive, how many could you get. It was really about the quality. So how many of the right buyers did you get talking about the subject matter that we were talking about? It almost became how do you put quantifiable metrics around how storytelling drives growth for the organization? So you don't get to look at those numbers of, I had 1 million eyeballs. Like great, you had 1 million eyeballs. If they were the wrong eyeballs that don't have the budget, aren't in my industry, aren't talking about what I'm doing, you just wasted money on 1 million eyeballs. And I think that when it comes to B2B marketers, at the C level, you have people who want to know, how did this drive growth? And you're going to drive growth in a couple key ways. You influence perception around a conversation. And these are marketers who are looking at things like perception management instead of PR. They're not looking for how many people picked it up. They're looking about how did it change the perception of the writer, of the reader, of the market, of the industry. And I think that's where analysts really start to play a very interesting role. And I think that for me, as a marketer who became an analyst, I think for me, when I think about a video or when I think about something that I'm writing, I tend to always think about, am I just trying to grab for eyeballs, which are going to be useless? Like it's just a useless conversation. Or am I trying to influence perception so that when I have to have the next conversation with one of our buyers in the Constellation Executive Network, did I get them to ask me a different question? Or can I give them a different direction so that they are driving growth and they are empowering their next best decision? It's like, how do I guide them into that? And I think that's a difference between, I just want to influence eyeballs versus I'm going to drive growth with this team that I'm building between marketing and AR and the analyst.
No, it's a great perspective there. And I want to bring John Furrier in to talk about more than just analysts. I mean, John's built a podcast network in the early ages. He's built like media properties. He's now part of, you've got your analyst side of the business and the media and the event side. Tell us more. I mean, what's changed in this marketplace as well as we've seen this B2B to B2C shift? And, we're also seeing some really bad behavior in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think how we got here is about greed and money too. I mean, at the same time, people are having a hard time monetizing services. So to me, the analyst relations and influence relations and public relations interactions are changing and that power dynamics are changing. So I think the spectrum of analyst relations has increased. Now, also another dimension you mentioned earlier, these are departments and companies. So, to me, the role of an independent analyst doesn't exist for the analyst relations department. So that's like only one small sliver of what the world is. So to say that the industry exists to serve the analyst person at the company is not really the industry. They're a buyer, and
yes,
the analyst provides services to that buyer because they have needs. I think the lack of analysts, and from a supply standpoint, has caused those analyst relations departments to realize there's not many analysts to relate to. Okay, so what happens is you have a problem. So that means if I'm trying to make money as a marketing service, and I'm delivering pizzas at night, and I'm doing cool things, and I'm doing lead gen campaigns, I'm doing good marketing services, or I have a blog and I can't get the banner ads because I don't have enough volume. I got to feed the family. Oh, I'll just be an analyst. They make great money, and I'll tell the customers what they want to hear. That's good money. Okay, so that's a problem. Now there's a role there's also a role for influence. Attention is not influence. So reputation and authority has been the hallmarks of analysts. They do the research, they provide that service to the marketplace of people who want to consume that's either free or subscription or buyers, and then they provide advisory-like services to the customers. And a lot of them are really good services, message shaping, help us position products. But the one thing that jumps out that's the problem is the amplification. Everybody wants amplification. Amplify my message. And they don't have media companies. Okay. So, and that's a problem. IDC had IDG. Other company, Gartner didn't need it because they had the Magic Quadrant. But other firms didn't have a media outlet to amplify. And that, I think, has been the real kind of obvious thing in the market is that, it's hard to run a media business. It takes real talent to write stories, cover news, journalists. And we've invested that as in our business 100% from our sponsorships on theCUBE. So by having a media business that allowed us to build an audience, and I think having news, opinion, and research for free has created great authentic content and audience. That has given us the luxury to put videos on our sites that drive traffic and do things. So I think the problem is that there's money to be had in amplification, and then there's also, they don't have audiences. Most of the analyst firms, and most firms admit that they're like, we don't have an audience. We can't really help. We'll make maybe some campaigns for you, or some are building audiences. And I think that's a new move, which is not a bad move. It's a good move. I think it's a smart move, but it's hard to turn up a media company overnight. I remember Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberger when they started Recode. They had a $10 million investment, and they could only get a certain number of people to come to the new brand. That was them. And they were big brands. So building a media company is extremely difficult. And that's it's just in the numbers. You need an audience to amplify. And I think that's where the B2B markets get hung up on views.
So John, when you see like a video called Revolutionizing Server Optimization in the Modern Data Center get 50,000 views, you say, is that real? Are there that many people watching that?
Well, the way to get views on paid is you do banner ad buys. You basically do syndicated ad buys. So there's a market there for that. But you can't go from 3 views to 50,000 views. That's just basically
24 hours.
That's like a bot farm net. But there are ways to expose content out there from paid. If you do a video that's B2B, it's not going to get as much. YouTube B2B, it's not enough audience. Pat Gelsinger, Andy Jassy, Michael Dell, Jeff Bezos, they only get like 20,000 views. Right. Exactly. So the product manager at Qualcomm or wherever the companies, they're not going to get more than 800. Right.
They'll get 1,000. All right, but let me turn to Larry, because Larry's been in the space many times, and as executive editor-in-chief of ZDNet, what led to the downfall of B2B media, and are we coming down the same path here right now?
Well, all this stuff rhymes. B2B media, I don't know if it was a complete downfall as much as it became splintered. And the end of the day, it was a tug of war between the who and the how many. And in media companies, the how many usually wins. And as a result, you wound up chasing all these models that sometimes rhymed and sometimes didn't. Like ZDNet, we had affiliate, subscription, leads, and advertising. Some of those things are absolutely at odds with each other. Like advertising and leads, 2 totally different animals, 2 different funnels, 2 different everything. The other thing to happen is kind of what John touched on a little bit. I used to take briefings, and the running gag was like, you're one of the few B2B journalists, that still follow this stuff. And I'm like, well, it's because you numbnuts hired them all.
Yeah. Right.
So the B2B companies started their own influence stuff, and they hired a lot of the journalists. Actually, they hired most of them, really. So there was a shortage of B2B journalists too. There was a shortage of models, and it's a weird business to understand, but ultimately it's the who and the how many. So the way I kind of came at it was I kind of looked at like a portfolio.
Yeah.
I had writers who I knew were the who, and I had writers who I knew were the how many. And, you know, on any given day, you're either an analyst, a journalist, or a circus monkey. If I have a good day, I'm all three in the same day. But it's sort of, that's how it works, right? So you basically just had a clash of models. And so what I see, and the reason that this AR is where it is now is because all these things are blending together.
Yeah.
And they're all like in the same department roughly, right? So AR is with PR, they're reporting to marketing. And I mean, you know, I was at a vendor for a bit, and the thing that cracked me up the most is I went to marketing. I was like, wow, you guys get shit on as much as media people do. And sales is the one with sales has all the ammo, right? So the problems are very similar. So I think the opportunity with analyst relations and influence, all that is you can actually, we're early on that progression before it all blows up. So we can learn a lot from the media and how, you know, how it went wrong to craft something that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I really appreciate that, Larry. Let's just back to everyone here. What's the slippery slope that we're headed to? Like, have we crossed it, the line between marketing and objective independent analysts? Anybody want to take that one? Are we crossing it? Are we on the way there?
I don't know if the line exists. I mean, I think, like I said, people have stepped up to fill the void of lack of analysts. Larry points it out. There's not a lot of media left because, one, the revenue can't support good talent, and they go get better jobs at inside agencies and companies, and they do what they do best. And by the way, companies should be going direct with their messages. I think that's a good trend for companies to do. But I think the problem is, I think the spectrum's increasing. The aperture of what analysts do is a spectrum of attention and reputation. And some analysts that don't do research, they do good influence, but the influence problem is that the B2C, as Liz was pointing out, comes from I have to sell something, get my affiliate link in my profile. The issue in B2B is influence isn't about selling something or pimping something up or you know, putting lipstick on a pig. It's simply saying, hey, I'm going to give you information so you can progress to some discovery, to find something out for yourself that might help you. So influencing a decision or a positioning in their mind's eye or whatever on behalf of the client. And I think that's good influence. I think you'll see that develop in this market where you have influence relations be about media attention that converts to reputation. If you do attention without reputation, you could be a streaker in public square and everyone will look at you and say, look at that person. I see that. And their metrics will go up, but they're not doing anything. Right. So
you're seeing that in B2C too, John. It's an amazing point, right? You're already seeing that happen with B2C influencers, right? Yeah. Like, you know, I'm 21 and I look cute on TikTok. And so send me to Italy on, you know, for a free trip. And, you know, 5 years ago, there were trips flying everywhere. Anyone who was remotely cute and had a camera could go anywhere in the world and talk about it on TikTok. And you could call yourself an influencer. But
in B2B, that doesn't exist. And the thing that I see happening, how people can influence purchase decision, in my opinion, this new era, and this is what I see, is that if you have organic, authentic community, you can influence people's decisions. So you're going to start to see collective intelligence with AI form a community model where the best analysts are like DJs at a party. You can have a model where I can spin DJ and get people excited and confident about a solution, but ultimately the vote of the crowd will matter. So you'll see community engagement to be a big factor in reputation. If they don't have it, that's bigger than views. Views, I think, are going to go away. People are going to figure that out. They have already. I think that ship has sailed. It's going to be, if say you're influential, show me impact. Show me how you impacted my business. It's not about briefings. It's like, you can say all the briefings all you want, but show me what you're doing, your actions. And I think that's proof of work.
And where it's going to get really interesting, and you're seeing this in everything from dating apps to whatever, like people are going old school. Like they want in-person relationships.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be more like, how can you get a bunch of CXOs in a room and who those CXOs are?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be, you know, tough to prove out. But I think that's where things are going, right? I mean, and I think that's going to be where things are going to get to. And it's going to be, I guess, that last mile of influence, so to speak, or connecting.
Well, I'll tell you the difference between that community model and the analyst model, though, however, because so with the CMO Council, mean, my day to day was bringing in CMOs, getting us into an organic, environment that wrapped around content, not wrapping around events. So the whole purpose of the CMO Council was, how do we get these CMOs and just belows to come in and have content to consume, have something they can chew on every day that was new, that was different, that was pushing their own thinking forward. But how did we get them comfortable to talk, and share their best practices? And I will tell you that now, being on the analyst side of that and not building that community anymore, as an analyst, I'm more interested in listening to when that community gets together. So when we did our AXS event just recently in Austin, I didn't just want to be in the room and take pictures with everybody. It's fine to go and want to take selfies everywhere. Great, fantastic. I'm on a plane. Sweet. I went someplace new. What I want to do is also listen to what those executives that only we were able to bring into that room had to say, because they're the ones that are going to give me the leading indicator of what technologies I need to be looking at as an analyst to say, hey, wait a minute, they're not talking about this. These buyers aren't talking about solving this problem over here. They're actually still trying to solve this problem over there. How do I go over there to find those right solutions? How do I listen?
That real world knowledge sharing and really community of sharing with other peers and not even competitors. Sometimes even competitors is great. I'm going to wrap up the section on how do we get here and why is it so bad? What happens when you engage a marketing strategy firm, they kind of prop up a fake analyst in the play, and then you're at risk of FTC rules kind of being broken with influencers who don't disclose their relationships as marketers. I mean, does that put technology firms at risk when this happens? Anybody? John, you're biting up. Go for it, John.
I don't think so. No, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think the rules of FTC is mostly around consumer. I think they're outdated too. Last time I remember the FTC about disclosure was related to Twitter and Instagram. I think B2B has not yet evolved that level. So I don't think they're,
but if
they are, they don't know it. I think the trust, the implied contract is more important than actual FTC, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, you're putting access out there. It's a service business, like I said earlier. I mean, I see the best analysts do great research on the far end of the spectrum, and they present it to customers, and they get hired because of it. Okay, they're not just there to that, and that's how the best analysts I've seen work. They do a great job, and the client says, "Hey, I want to hire you. You can help me with my launch." And now in AI more than ever, there's a need for a real high-end service to help companies get their products reset and their messaging and do that job. That comes with the reputation that they've proven. That's how I've seen it work. Now, again, like I said, the spectrum's increased because the aperture of the market's digital, and it's included influence and marketing. So I think disclosure is critical. I know some great analysts who were like, hey, I don't have the chops to do research or the money. I'm going to stick in my lane. I'm a solo practitioner, and this is what I'm doing. That's how I make money, and they disclose it. So I think disclosure is more as everything is all about here.
Yeah, I think it's about knowing your lane and knowing what budget you fall in.
Yeah.
Like if you're a vendor, if you're doing the influence play, then pick somebody good at that. If you're the research play, look for that. Marketing, etc. Right? Like I think that's more showing there are different flavors here. And you should be able to go and look at the menu and know what those flavors are.
But John and Larry, I think with Gen AI, the internet is going to be an even more noisier place. That's what Cory Doctorow called the enshittification, and with that, I think it's an unparalleled chance and opportunity for independent, trusted thought leaders to cut through that shit that's going to be generated by AI, and that's a unique chance. And with that, with those original thought leaders who tend to be, I think in B2B, the best ones are analysts, are passionate about it, comes the question of reputation and thus trust. And I think the voices that are going to cut through all that noise are going to be the trusted voices. And furthermore, I don't think it's a question of size or business models. We've seen some very large tier one firms restricting reviews, restricting comments from vendors, restricting research agendas from vendors. In other words, reducing transparency. And here I'd like to call someone out. James Governor from Redmonk, where they actually disclose all their sponsors, they disclose all their clients. And I think that transparency really, really helps building trust in, and then cut through all the noise and that. And this is what vendors should absolutely seek and favor and amplify. If you don't do that, then you'll go to vendors, to analyst firms who do awards for hire, research where you get the results after you pay, and that kind of things, white label research and all that. And it's really, really important to see who is an authority in the market. I'll just leave with that.
Hey, Ludo, Ludovic, that's a great point. We're going to go to Act 2. What does bad look like? And we'll start with Larry. Like, what makes it obvious when people are juicing numbers, which is one of the top questions some people ask. Go ahead.
Just full confession. I've done some of these tricks on the side back in the day. So the thing to think about here is just use some common sense, right? So if a tech brand is reviewing lawnmowers with affiliate links, rest assured that they're getting commissions on the back end, because they wouldn't be doing it otherwise, right? And you see it all over the place. Like, I mean, I could go on, and it's not even just tech, it's any publisher. You will see things where it's like a home decor thing, and suddenly they're doing flash drives, and vice versa. Like, it's all over the place. It's just web pollution. The other thing is when you see numbers that don't make sense,
like what?
Chances are that they're puffed up somehow. Think of videos that autoplay. Oldest trick in the book. Yep. Right? And no one's watching this stuff. One time I went to a Forbes gallery. I went to the bathroom, came back, and gave them 50 page views. Yeah. And it was just a number 1. It wasn't even number 2. And it was like, this is just stupid tricks, right? You see the Taboola stuff. It just goes on and on and on. And, so you got to just kind of look at it and go, all right, this is done by a bot, or this is, ginned up somehow. And this happens. But again, the ultimate tug of war here is the who and the how many, right? Like, I mean, I've seen orders for leads where some vendor wanted 3,000 leads for like all the higher ed CIOs. And you look at it and you're like, who agreed to this? Like, is there even 3,000 of those people around? Right? So, and then, you do some stupid lead tricks to try to get to that number. But either way, like, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. And
to be clear, we don't do that here at Constellation.
This industry is prone to that.
Larry, you're not teaching the dark arts class here.
No.
Larry suddenly became Professor Snape.
Larry's suddenly become reformed here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of dumb tricks you can do. And
a lot of them.
If you're a knowledgeable consumer, you can spot them pretty damn easily.
Yeah. Liz, real quick, but go ahead. I'll get to you, and I'll get to John.
I think that the other thing to remember here is that this isn't just some like random person that's like, I think I'd like to juice numbers someday. Like, that's not usually what's happening. That's like, most ethical people aren't thinking that way. But also really remember how a view is constructed and how platforms define a view. And I would say for marketers out there, when you're looking at what you believe you are acquiring, the content that you're acquiring from an analyst, remember that for platforms like Google, for platforms like, X or LinkedIn Live, like whatever we are on, the industry standard, the norm is that you're probably going to get about 15% of views from your addressable audience. It's about 15%. But the other thing is that a view is defined that 50% of your video surface is viewable to an audience for at least 15 seconds of uninterrupted time. So in other words, a view is when someone scrolls and, in Larry's case, gets up and goes to the bathroom, right? And at least 50% of the screen has to be viewable. So I think that we have to remember what a view is. And I think that as you start to understand and you remember what the metrics are based on, you can legitimately look at things and say, you know what? I probably didn't need 1 million views for my, CX automated assistant video. I probably needed 80 really good views where people were commenting and engaging down below. Like, I look at the, like, John, I'm gonna actually toss this to you. I look at the videos and I look at the conversations that you guys will spark, and I'm like, that's hot. Like that's what I, as a marketer, would get excited about. Is what are people talking? How does it extend off the view? Is my question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the B2B market on views is really it's hard to watch sometimes, right? So the videos are like podcasts. It's a huge commitment to watch a video.
Hostage videos.
Our videos are 15 to 30 minutes now because we have AI tools that chop it up automatically to make it shorter and more micro chunks. We can roll them and create personalized feeds. So that's with different strategy, but a 30-minute video is a huge commitment. So if you look at the YouTube metrics, they all spike up on the normal curve and then they decay over time. And then roughly 90% of the people are gone at the end, but very few. But what YouTube doesn't measure is who came back in, right? So full duration views. So YouTube's got its own little challenges, but nobody's watching views. We try to expose our video as much as possible on our site and add like Business Insider. We do like a media buy, and we just buy impressions, and we try to get that. And we do the autoplay, so we do that because we want people to see it moving, especially when it's live, and try to get people to click on it and come in, so they can have a relationship with it. So that's kind of like what I call the Web 2.0, soon to be aged out metrics. But the B2B marketers are still on Web 1.0. How many views did I get? So I think that the B2B marketers got to progress their IQ to think more of network effect. For example, we just had a big event in our studio. We pumped out like 20 great live programs here on SuperCloud 6, AI Innovators. We had Walmart's EVP talking about his LLM. And people still haven't seen use case examples of an enterprise doing their own LLM. He's got 1,000 likes on LinkedIn and 28 reshares. This is the CIO pumping up our brand and our video of him on it. That's not measurable by the metrics. So that doesn't even come up on the logs. So you're going to start to see network effect come in. I bring that up example only to point that the new infrastructure of knowledge graphs and network effect, whether it's LinkedIn or LinkedIn's a walled garden, home of the story, that's not even measured. And it's the most high impact right now. And all the people that I know that are on LinkedIn, that the good analysts, are seeing great pickup on LinkedIn because the people are voting with their clicks. So if LinkedIn doesn't have likes, or all their company members are liking it, that's not working. So that's one tell sign immediately. LinkedIn is an easier measure to spot bad than YouTube. And LinkedIn is much more authentic because
how can a CMO tell that someone by accidentally or maliciously
it's on their AR team to look at and say, oh, that's all their staff liking it and reposting it. They're self-liking it, and they're trying to create momentum.
Farms or human click farms are at work. Like, can you tell? Are there certain telltale signs?
When it goes from 5 views to 50,000
in an hour,
in like 3 minutes or an hour? Yeah, or likes are higher than someone hit the wrong switch, and there's like more likes than views. And that's an obvious one.
Come on, who would do something like that? All right, I'm going to go to Crystal.
And the B2B marketers want the B2B marketers want numbers. Okay,
they do.
So they give us numbers because their bosses want to see numbers. How many views did we get? So there's another other element here that's important to understand, is that sometimes the behavior is being driven. Yeah.
Yes, the demand side of the house. Crystal, what is ARInsights doing to combat this problem when people juice numbers? Can you guys tell? Can you see?
Well, I'm going to answer that question, but first I want to say I have learned a lot from you all. Thank you. And second, I got such a great cosign on some messaging that I give to our clients in regards to like analyst portals, right? Mm-hmm. And I always talk about know your audience and know in the B2B game, it's all about what are our objectives and what are we trying to accomplish. So do not expect Facebook or LinkedIn type rocket ship numbers. I mean, we're talking about this sliver of, a landscape here and a very precise rationale. So I think I'm going to wave my flag about the importance of know your audience and, the scope of that audience. So thank you. In terms of ARInsights, I will say, we do come under a little bit of fire with our rankings. What people don't see publicly is behind the firewall, our Power 100 is actually broken into 2 metrics. One is based off of AR teams and their actual meetings with folks like Ray and Liz and, the many other analysts in the world. So we like to think that our clients are the best in the world. And if they're meeting with you, there's a reason why. You're valuable, and they're vetting you, and they're actually doing extra work to track and make sure that they're staying on top of their relationship with you and keeping you apprised of what's going on. So that's one side, and that's actually 50% of what we do. And it's not just emails that we count. We actually segment emails versus actually substantive data. On the other side of that, we look at your content, because, there are folks that do want that amplification, a legitimate amplification and not a bot farm, right? And they want to be able to give these bites of the good work that the analysts are doing to grab the attention of their stakeholders. So what we do is we value research as number one. And I'll tell you, when someone tells us, hey, this looks kind of strange, we notice this oddity, is this really research? We evaluate it. When we see that things are getting tagged in odd ways and that doesn't really make sense, we potentially reclassify things. And so we're always open to hearing what's going on in the marketplace, specifically around publications. We're always fine-tuning our algorithm. In fact, we're open to talk and share about our algorithm and how we calculate these scores to help bring up the profile of analysts. And I'll say that in our Power 100, it's not just your giant, infrastructure of analyst firms. There are smaller ones, bigger ones, and I'm sure we could argue the validity of all of that, but we are totally open to, opening up and seeing, how do we do this right? We want to make sure that we're giving everyone an opportunity to really be found for your specializations, for the good work that you're doing, and, make sure that everyone is well represented.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And look, we've had conversations with your team, and I think every analyst should, just understand how it works or get a chance to kind of connect with you. I mean,
I have a question for you on the ARInsights insight. Is your customer the analyst relations department or the market at large to evaluate the analyst by on their merit? Or are you targeting the ones that serve the analyst relations department the best?
Our customers are the analyst relations departments. Correct. And we get most of our data on the analysts from the analysts, right? So different feeds for research. We're partnering with media quotes. All of these get different values in the algorithm that does all the ranking. And, we've expanded that sort of power ranking into these two segments so that folks can really look and see, okay, this is an analyst that has, 5 stars on the relationship aspect. And so if I dig a little bit further, I can see, oh, maybe this is an analyst that's wide in scope, right? So they're very popular because they're a broad subject matter analyst. And so it's a way of validating, because our database has over 7,000 analysts. So you can imagine, if you're looking for a handful of semiconductor analysts, you don't want to go through 7,000, and you want to be able to have some metric to help guide where you're going to, evaluate, see where you can read some of at least metadata of their research, right? Yeah.
Crystal, I'm now in sheer anxiety of it's like my Uber star ranking. Why? Oh my God, what's my Uber star ranking? And I'm only 4.7. Which car ride? Which driver gave me a bad score? Oh my God, did I drop a drink?
Well, and we're not.
It's full anxiety, Crystal.
It's just volume. It's not how great you are. There's no thumbs up and thumbs down. It's just
we gotta watch out for. We sometimes see sales guys posing as analysts, so we'll have to fix that at some point.
The problem, not to throw cold water on ARInsights, but I don't think that's the right optimization for an analyst to optimize for your ranking. And if people are going to have that Uber reaction, that's not what analysts do. They're not there to optimize for serving analyst relations department. They want to make money, but if they're good, they'll get that, right? So if I'm going to optimize my time to juice the rankings, is that the right behavior? That's an open question. By the way, I'm not on that list either.
50% of that you have no control over.
You control 50% of
that. It has everything to do is based off of whether teams are, entering in your meetings, right? And it has nothing to do with like how great the meeting went. It has everything to do with, if someone is taking the time to track their relationship. And it's just just a data point. At the end of the day, we do believe that it's the AR team's job to make sure they're aligned with the right analysts.
Well,
What about the customer? What about the customer? I mean, like, for example, I'm pretty deep in semiconductors myself, but I don't think I'm on the semiconductor list. But I meet with all the top semiconductor CEOs.
Do you even have a profile, John? John, maybe you don't even have a profile.
I don't know. I'll have to look.
I don't even have a profile, but I think I'm the only analyst that meets with most of the top CEOs. Most CEOs out there, so I'd probably be in the top ranking for sure. But that being said, and I don't do the analyst dance. So I'm not a real analyst in the sense of I'm more of an influencer, but I could be an analyst. I just don't want to be an analyst because I have other things to do, and I'm doing more research on behalf of the
John,
I'd have to look you up.
John, I'm having anxiety because of you.
Yeah. I got Dave Vellante. He's the real analyst. No, Dave heads up. Dave heads up the research, Shelley. No, but they're doing really deep research, and like that's not what I do. My swim lane is I do the interviews, but I'm a subject matter expert, and I get called into all the meetings. And some firms put me in the analyst category because they want to give me access. So I'm not going to use me as an example because I want to get the best access so I can get the best data for the reporting and the stuff we do.
But there are cases where like if you're talking to vendors that are not part of ARInsights, you'll never get tracked. And there's also that piece as well. So
I don't want to talk to them, and I don't want to talk to most of them.
So, but hey, I'm going to go to Ludo real quick to kind of close out this section, this act. What happens when technology vendors focus on influence instead of AR? What shifts, Ludovic?
It's a good one. As I said, I think it pushes analysts who themselves claim numbers which can't be verified. So I think maybe there's a point about verifying the true influence. But most importantly, I think it focuses the relationship into a more PR relationship, as in I push content to you, you push research, you amplify research. It's more of an outlet, and you totally miss the two-way conversation that you get with analysts, the validation, the sounding board, the advice, the coaching, and all that.
Some vendors don't care. Some vendors don't care. Some vendors don't care.
Yeah, fine. I agree with that, and we see that a lot as an agency. We deal with vendors with all kind of maturity. Some of them focus on the very short term, and what I've seen in a very empiric manner, Ray, is that vendor and marketeers who focus on short-term leads are doomed. They are the ones who will crash. And I'll tell you more. Marketeers who have a wrong attribution model, back to what the point Lise was making earlier, and I know that's very dear to Lise's heart. Marketeers who focus on either the first touch model or the last touch model, forgetting that a sale, an interaction, a B2B process, that spaghetti mess I was talking about earlier is very complex. Marketers who try to simplify that, where I got a new customer in my CRM system, or that customer went into an event and therefore signed after, forget all what goes in between. Why did the customer go on a website? Maybe because they read a report. Why a customer did go to an event? Maybe because a sales rep invited them to an event. Why did the actual customer close the deal? Maybe because they spoke to Constellation or whomever else. I think this is really important to understand, that the interaction is messy, that measuring it is actually a true simplification, back to the proverb I was citing earlier, and for giving away the analyst two-way relationship and advice is actually making you poorer.
All right, I'm going to turn it to Molly Lauck in an interview we did with her. She's the director of digital marketing at Legions and CMTA, for some views. Elle popped the video, and we're going to come back and talk about how to do it the right way and how to do good. And we might go a little bit over time, but we've got 80-some live viewers here. And if you've got questions, please try to put in the comments and LinkedIn as well. So go ahead. All yours, Elle. Send it on. This has been amazing. Yeah, it's been an amazing webinar. And I think a really important thing is we really wanted to reach out to someone to hear how it really should work, right? And we see a lot of folks going through these strategies, trying to juice up numbers, trying to make things work. But what does it say to you when you see folks deploy these kind of tactics in their marketing teams?
I think as a marketer and somebody that works in the digital front, when I see these type of tactics, it tells me that your program probably doesn't really know what they're doing, and they're not following best practices. They're not using these platforms and how they're intended to be used. And so to me, it kind of questions the larger strategy and collaboration, I think, behind what's going into these campaigns and just how they're, quote unquote, effectively running these marketing campaigns.
But the pressure is so huge, right? CMOs last 2 years, 3 years, they juice up the numbers, and then they get like the sugar high and the saccharine fall. So I don't know, what should technology vendors be doing if they want to ensure that their marketing dollars are being spent effectively or done in the right way? Like, is there a better way at this approach?
And I think COVID too, that's, to me, it's kind of been like the boom of digital, right? And so I think that it's kind of going back to the basics and understanding, I think, the right resources that you have. And I mean, if you look at some of the reporting and some of the CMO spends, it's all focused on digital, right? SEO, advertising, search optimization, LinkedIn advertising, especially if you're B2B. And so I think you have to create a holistic approach, holistic strategy and program that supports that. And so I think finding the resources that know how to use these platforms. All these platforms have different ways to advertise within the platforms themselves. And that's not essentially paying for bots. That's actually using, the different targeting, the different formatting approaches, and I think going about it the right way. And that's how these platforms intend for companies to advertise. And I mean, it takes a lot of work, right, to create good content that people want to see, supporting assets, supporting creative. And again, I think it just goes back to that holistic strategy and having the resourcing, the budget, and the budgets too, also in place to effectively, I think, run these campaigns, and then also understand how to kind of gauge performance and how to understand the metrics on the back end based on what that initial outcome is for that campaign itself.
It does go back to first principles, right? Really good content matters. Having the right engaged audience and community over time, right? It's very important, and really being authentic. So you actually mentioned something to me in the past, really about this. Another thing that's really important as part of a strategic program, employee advocacy. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, employee advocacy. It's probably one of my favorite things when it comes to, I think, digital.
This is your bag of secrets you're sharing to everybody.
Yep. And it's something I think too that, depending on the industry and potentially the organization, it's something that people are sleeping on, marketing teams are sleeping on. And again, it just goes back to kind of this digital boom post-COVID, and the way that we use these platforms, the way that we use these technologies has changed. And I think understanding where you can take advantage of that as a marketer. And for us, I think going back to B2B, LinkedIn is our primary platform. That's where we connect with customers. That's where we want employees to focus their time, their efforts, if they choose to be active on social. And so creating kind of this culture of employee advocacy where we are educating and equipping our employees to be active on these platforms, from profile updates versus, what kind of content do I share? Because at the end of the day, we know that people want to buy and do business with people that they know. And so creating, I think, and tapping into your employee culture and kind of giving them the tools to be comfortable on these platforms, know what to share, know what to highlight, is kind of a no-brainer. And then I think from a marketing standpoint, we also know that employee shared content performs well. I think it's, you're 7 times more likely to create a positive action from an individual if an employee shares content versus the brand. So I think it's just that it goes back to that trust. People, again, want to connect and engage with people that they know. And so, again, not just telling people you need to be active on LinkedIn. I think a lot of executives are already getting that pressure, especially in the tech industry, because I feel like tech industry is kind of ahead of the curve a bit, but taking it a next step and actually creating a program, teaching people how to do these things internally as well too.
Yeah, I mean, we're going from B to B to C. That relationship aspect is so important. LinkedIn does facilitate that. There seems to be less gamemanship on LinkedIn. You can't go and say, "Hey, I promise you 25,000 views for 25,000 bucks," right? On a topic like nobody wants to listen to. Right? We saw this like over the last few weeks, like, you know, with these marketing strategy firms posing as fake analysts, literally like take an arcane topic on a topic like honestly there would not be 500 people in the world looking at it and generating 25,000 views.
Well, and the platforms are, I mean, the algorithms are smart enough to pick up on that too. And so as they see it, they're just going to deprioritize your content, and you're still not going to reach the people that you want to reach. And so you're almost just kind of striking yourself, especially if you're on YouTube, right? And some of the quality controls that they have in place with just in general and how the algorithm works, because it's in their best interest, right, to get content in front of people that they want to see, that they'll engage with, to essentially keep them on the platform, kind of versus the latter.
Hey, Molly, this is really amazing. We wanted to get real insights from someone who's an expert in this space. You've been doing it for quite some time. Any last words you want to share with everyone?
I think just taking the time, I think, to be authentic and to build your brand. And I think investing in the right resources and the right budgets. If it's something you haven't looked at since post-COVID, it's probably something that you need to review and just add those budgets, add those resources accordingly. Because again, as a digital marketer, COVID has opened up, I think, so much opportunity because of the switch to digital. And there's some type of touch, some type of element in almost everything we do and we communicate. And so again, just taking the time to give your team the right resources and the right funding to be able to be successful.
Hey, thanks so much, Molly, for your insights. So
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
All right. We got some good insights here from Molly there. We got a few more minutes. I want to make sure we get to everybody. I want to make sure we get to what good looks like. I'm going to go quickly down the line on questions. Liz, what's the impact of paid media versus organic audiences?
You know, I think paid media will always be seen as paid media. And there's always, and I think in today's day and age where there are deep fakes and there are AI stories being created, and when we spend a really long period of time talking about, is Kate Middleton's picture actually photoshopped or is it not? I mean, when that's the conversation on LinkedIn, we know we're in trouble, right? So I think there's a high degree of skepticism with our viewers. Like, let's even exclude the marketers or people who are buying things right now. So I think that, you know, I think that when it comes to paid, there is a little bit of aspect of like, oh my God, you're just agreeing with everybody. I think that when it does come to that organic impression, I do think that what marketers are looking for, at least what I looked for when I was buying programs like this, it's really about, is the content that was actually delivered to me, regardless of what the numbers said or what the numbers on the piece of paper and the report said, because I'm skeptical of that too. What does this content fit within how I want my brand to be perceived? And if part of how my brand is being perceived has a whole lot of skepticism as to whether the content is authentic, it's usable, it's valuable, then that's part of your brand. Like you kind of have to remember that, like, you bought it, it's part of your brand now. So I think that it really does kind of require for B2B marketers to really take a look at their holistic kind of content ecosystem and say, does all of this fit together? And is this really going to influence that bottom line? And is it going to drive growth? Because that's what we're being tasked to do. There's no CMO out there that's being asked to make things pretty. That doesn't exist anymore. They're being asked to drive growth. So does the content that I just bought drive growth?
Does content marketing align with growth and the content authentic? Larry, what's this Moneyball concept you were talking about for analysts?
I think AR really has to get with sales and marketing. And a lot of this is just transformation and breaking down silos of tech systems, but they got to start measuring these assets because they are assets. And if you don't find a way to quantify them in a way that appeals to sales or marketing or whoever, to say, hey, you bought this reprint, we sent it out to some customers, we got 4 nibbles or whatever the nibbles are. You got to play that game and you got to find some way to quantify it because the AR budgets are under attack. I mean, PR doesn't understand you, marketing doesn't get you, and sales sure as hell doesn't get you. So if you don't start quantifying things and start figuring out who the players are to track those assets, then we kind of look like print publications.
Lovely. John, what are sustainable approaches to making this all work?
I think the point that she made about COVID enabling a lot of digital is an absolutely accurate fact. That's brought up and opened everyone's eyes to video, and hence the monetization there. But I think to build an audience, you have to have trust, good content over time, true live, not fake live, good continuous flow, and tools and even AI around the corner to provide value to audiences. Those audiences want a trustful partner they want to consume from, and good analysts will do the work to prove that they have the chops and will be hired by analyst relations. And I think analyst relations departments will probably fold into a new group with AR and influencer relations, because comms communications professionals are the new marketing czars. Earned media is the thing. Paid media is dead, in my opinion. Anyone who said paid media is a thing, it's over. It's cover charge to get into the market. Every single company I advise and talk to wants a direct business model with the audience, and that's the focus. And earned media is the only way to get there. But you got to pay for it. You got to have a staff. You got to work with partners to help you do it. So earned media is not just PR, it's AR now. So that's a whole nother ball game. It requires authority, reputation, trust, and execution. Again, this is kind of the new thing that's brought into the fold. To me, that's the real thing happening.
Sounds like we have to call out some of these fake media tactics that are going on. Ludovic, how do we call out the bad actors in this business?
I've got a simple analyst litmus test. I think the first one is focus on insights. Do you get real intrinsic value from your interactions? So when you see it, when you put an exec with an analyst, do you see some kind of like juice going on and say, oh yeah, okay. Do you see some real exchange and interaction? I think that's the first one. Regardless of what's published, don't focus on vanity metrics, but focus really on insights. Number one. Number two, is that backed by real research? Do the analysts have a published research agenda, or do they hide it? Do they make it up as they go, or do they have evaluations? Do they do their homework? Do they know who you are before you turn up? And do they allow draft review? I'm really, really big on draft reviews. And then thirdly, is back to Lee's point, and I don't know how you measure that. I agree violently with what John said. It's all about the conversation. Is the analyst a thought leader that really drives conversation, that gives you an aha moment, and then that drives it? In the 2000s, IBM drove like smart cities as a concept. They had nothing to sell, of course, but the concept took on. So who in nowadays can really claim they are driving a conversation and making their idea viral? I think that's the key point. And analysts are great in that. The analysts are the one who make and break categories.
All right, Crystal.
Ray, can I just toss one definition in real quick? Oh, we're out of time. Never mind. Crystal, you're more important. You talk.
I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think that if you're looking for great analysts, you go to a place where you can research, find out what they're covering in a really easy way, and then do the digging and make sure that what the analyst is publishing is going to be, good and fair.
We have, you may get some pushback on that in the future, but we'll have that at a separate discussion. But I think a lot of the challenge is how the ratings and rankings really reflect the market that Ludo's talking about in terms of influencing buying behavior. If we can't capture the buying behavior, which is a really hard signal to capture. And so that's the tough part. Or is my audience, back to what John is saying, like really viewing the stuff that we're seeing in the metrics of media, right? If the views and the metrics aren't correct, like how do we get those right? And I think that's the challenge. But if we're looking for an authoritative place to actually do some research on analysts, I mean, there aren't too many places, and you guys do have a place to do that. And I think that's a very important part of this ecosystem.
Yeah. And again, like I can't say enough, like we're always open to have a conversation. We really do want to be a good actor in the community at large, right? We have a vested interest in it.
Yeah, no, you guys are a great actor. I think some people are gaming the system in that ecosystem, and that's where a lot of the conversation is at.
We are just as much as a partner with the AR teams as we are with the analysts, right? Our business relies on it. So
yeah. And
so everyone does. Hey, real quick call to action here, and we'll get to the last point on metrics. Actually, let's do the metrics first. What are the key marketing metrics in an age of AI? Crystal, you can go first. We'll go down the line. What's important? What are you measuring? So
Oh goodness, you might just want to skip me. We're honestly we're having these conversations, and we're still figuring that out when it comes to analyst relations and measuring. I mean, the big one is a theme. I said I didn't have an answer, but of course I do. Is the value, right? What are we earning? What are we learning from the analysts? What are the impacts, right? Everything is about trust, reputation, and the bottom line of, how is that impacting the market?
I encourage everyone to work with you guys. Crystal, you're a great contact, good person to talk to, share ideas. I think people should do that. Ludovic, key marketing metrics in the age of AI, 10 seconds.
Engagement and virality of conversations.
Okay, conversations, engagement. John, key metrics, marketing.
My number one thing in the future is with AI is actually it's going to index everything. It's going to be what your graph looks like, your value graph. It's a term I coined around who's interacting with you. You're judged by the company that you keep. And that's going to be a metric that marketers are going to look at and saying, what does this graph look like? How's their content mapped to it? And content is the proof of work. The graph is the value in the community. That's going to be the stakeholders' number one metric. Who is in your community and who's engaging with you? Are they participating? And at what level?
Wow, we're doing these metrics live. We might even have an answer by the end of this. Larry, what are the key marketing metrics in an age of AI?
I think it is going to be the knowledge graph, and it's also going to be, it's kind of simple, really. Do you do good enough work that when it gives you the generative AI answer at the top, that's going to cite your stuff?
Ooh, there you go.
That's
Liz, last word. Liz, last word.
I think it's going to be the margin. I think it's going to be the margin in between, right? It's going to be the how much do you spend on the campaigns, whether it's your emails, whether it's your social, whether there is still going to be paid. Sorry, John. But how much is that going to be earned, right? It's just going to. It's just a reality. Sorry, and hopefully they spend it with you guys. But
Ray.
I think that where the margin comes in is how much engagement. To John's point about that engagement graph. How much did that increase? How much conversation did you start? And how much did you drive down what you had to spend? Where you paid for eyeballs? Where you paid for junk numbers? Where you paid for all that? You really want that margin to increase. But the other thing is, stop calling everything thought leadership. If there's anything I want marketers to do, is thought leadership is only defined as a truly new idea that actually lasts the test of time. Just saying that your product is cool and putting it on a PDF is not actually thought leadership. Paying someone to then regurgitate that is not thought.
What if analysts rated each other, Ray? That would be interesting.
We're trying to
no,
we're
we're
popularity.
John,
Hey, quick call to action.
Analyst summer camp? Come on.
Hey, quick call to action, everybody. Take the pledge if you get a chance. It's on there.
Thank you.
We're going to declare an amnesty for vendors who have partaked in the past of supporting people that are faking these views, juicing stuff. Call it the bad actors. Anyone who promised to use 25,000 views for $50,000 is masquerading as marketing agencies, then claiming to be an analyst on the other side. Call it the bad actors. Call up ARInsights if you see a bad actor. Call out other folks. Talk to the vendors. Say, hey, this is not right. Something is wrong in the market. We need to speak up, especially when you have bad actors threatening to write poorly about vendors because they aren't being paid. Call those folks out. And more importantly, call out the vendors when they're engaging in good behavior and bad behavior, because I think we really need that for this industry to survive. So, hey, I want to thank our guest chair, Crystal. Thank you. Ludovic, thank you. John, Larry, and Liz, this is the end of the CRTV podcast. Thanks. But if you have questions, please throw them out. And I really appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, guys.